Please set me on fire. Please set me.
Welcome to Rose Plovie, the Unsolved Murder podcast by Salty Vixen. She was my second-grade step-grandmother who disappeared November 1929, and her body mysteriously returned, dismembered. That is, if that was her body, as it has never been proven, to the home in Niles, Michigan in February 1930. This story has haunted my family for generations. That became a family secret, hoping it would be forgotten. The truth is, we all have family secrets. Some are too dark to share. Our fantasies, our fears, our shameful acts, our wishes. Often, we want to erase them from our own memory, but they don't go away and torture us non-stop. Yes, keeping secrets is a lonely business. Some secrets are meant to be taken to the grave and never be spoken of again. But with my family, well, we are cursed because of the secret, a dark family secret that was unlocked when I was 19 years old. My journey all started way back in the 1994-95 school year. I was a freshman at North Farmington High School in Farmington Hills, Michigan. I had to take a health class, and in that class, I had to do a family history project to go all the way back to our great-grandparents to see what health risks, if any, we had to look out for. When it was my turn to present the project, Mr. Grodzicki gave me a funny look and said, "Did you attempt to do the project, Rachel? Why do you have so many blanks on your poster board?" My peers all laughed at me. I told him there were blanks in the family tree because nobody knew that part of the family. "I do not believe you," he said. "Everyone in the classroom has completed their family tree, and you are the only one in all my years teaching here who did not have this easy project completed. I'm giving you a D." Yeah, that's right, I failed it. My voice was reduced to nothing at this point. I did the project as best as I could, as there were too many family secrets that made completing the family tree project impossible to complete, because nobody talked. Well, at least that was a way for older generations. And that is why so much family history, for everyone, has been lost due to family secrets. You see, my mom's mom, Elizabeth, well, she did not know her father. She knew the name, Oscar Percival. She knew that her parents, Rachel and Oscar, got married when they were teenagers in 1928. And 6 years later into the marriage, in the 1930s, Oscar had an affair and got the woman pregnant. Rachel told him to go to the woman and marry her, which he did. Rachel took her 2 children and left Kentucky in his Model T car and went to Detroit, Michigan. Elizabeth never saw her father again. My dad's mom, Jean, did not know her dad. She knew his name was Jesse Redford Harnish. Ruth and Jesse in 1926 had a shotgun wedding in Detroit, Michigan. Those kind of weddings were normal in the 1920s, at least in most families. We all have hormones, and sex education, well, it wasn't taught back then the way it is taught today. Harnish had a gambling addiction and would go to Kegel Harbor, Michigan to gamble. And we all know in the 1920s, Kegel Harbor was one of the many places where the Detroit Purple Gang would go to gamble, and more than likely, he gambled with them. Whatever the reason was, he left Detroit. Ruth got divorced and remarried. And Jesse, well, he was no longer in my grandma Jean's life. Then there was my dad's father, Jean's husband, Frank Cressy. He was a man who was misunderstood. Granted, he did have a drinking problem, and Grandma divorced him in the mid-1950s. She tried to get him involved in her son's lives. Well, he left, remarried, and had 2 more wonderful kids. Grandma Jean remained close with his mother, Josephine, until her death in 1961. You see, I did not leave the blanks on the poster board purposely. The blanks were family secrets that were supposed to be taken to the grave, all due to family shame. When I was 19, I revisited my family tree for an anthropology class in college. This time, I asked my Grandma Jean for information about my grandfather, Frank Cressy. She told me his brothers were still alive, as Frank died in 1986. His 2 brothers and Jean kept in contact during the holidays and birthdays over the years, as they would send cards to each other. One great uncle lived 10 minutes down the road from Grandma Jean. He kept to himself, a bit of a homebody, and that is why, well, at least that's what we think, is the reason he did not socialize with my dad and uncle throughout the years. I did meet him once, and he told me the story about the Cressys coming from Suffolk, England, going to Hillsdale, Michigan just before the American Civil War. And that, my friends, is another family secret and story for another time. The other great uncle, I went to visit him, and that is when my world lit up. I pulled out a box of old photos, and one was of a man, blonde, about 5'8", sitting next to a woman. My great uncle told me those are my second great grandparents. It was a wedding photo, a beautiful one from 1902. He paused and said, "I look like Mary, the woman in the picture, and the man, well," he said to put that photo away quickly. He told me there was a rumor that he murdered somebody and did not know the full story. He then said whenever the family began talking about him, they would speak in the Dutch language, and the words he remembered were the following: "Nobody believed Plovie from Zuzilla, West Flanders, murdered his second wife." Those words haunted me for years, and now at 44, well, I needed to lift the family curse, to give my second great grandparents a voice and expose the family secret. Over the years, I gathered newspaper clippings, probate documents, and family stories to uncover a story that will make your mouth agape. This story has everything: affair, Al Capone connection, and murder. The media at the time said my second great grandfather, Plovie, or known as Philip, did it. The truth is, there was no proof apart from the body randomly showing up February 1930. That was 3 months after she disappeared, in pieces across the backyard and basement. At the time of her disappearance, November 1929, the police searched his home and yard to find absolutely nothing. Philip could not speak up because he was shot and killed, or at least in the words of Deputy Sheriff Overcash from the Detective Bureau, who was assigned to this investigation, said, "My second great grandfather died from suicide by a gunshot wound to the head." This case had so many holes in it, and none of it made sense. Overcash did not do a proper investigation as the police searched my second great grandparents' home the moment Philip reported Rose's disappearance and found nothing. You see, they lived in a small bungalow home in a sparsely populated area at the time in the suburbs of Niles, Michigan. Neighbors would have reported noise and screams. There was nothing except the sound of a car at 4 a.m. on November 24th, 1929 that woke him up. And then he went to his wife's bedroom and found that she was not there. And once the police station opened, well, that's when he made the report that she was missing. Yes, they did not sleep together. It was a 2-bedroom bungalow home. And it makes you wonder, how long were they living apart? Was that normal in couples in the 1920s and 30s? Perhaps yes. Or perhaps there's something more sinister to Rose's life that we did not know. The only reason why Overcash took on this investigation was the fact he did not like my second great grandfather. You see, he had a personal vendetta against him, a wealthy contractor who was friends with judges, attorneys, the mayor, and he was also foreign. Also, Overcash's ex-wife was friends with Rose. Overcash has made many mistakes when it comes to crime, including accusing the Detroit Purple Gang for kidnapping the Lindenberg baby, which we all know the Purple Gang did not take part in the kidnapping. Overcash was called down to Niles about the case of Fred, the killer Burke, who took part in the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. He also was contracted by Al Capone and the Detroit Purple Gang, and murdered local cop Charles H. Skelly. This isn't an episode of Desperate Housewives. This is real life, and this is my family. It's time to open up Pandora's box and tell the tale about Rose Plovie, the unsolved murder. After her body was found in 1930, the jury said that she died by unknown person or persons, as nobody believed my second great grandfather, Phil Plovie, did it. He was in his 50s, weak, an empath who loved life. He was a hard worker, and I know for a fact he never hit a woman. In the era where it was the norm for husbands to beat their wives, Philip was raised by a loving family in Belgium to learn to respect women. He never once hit my second great grandmother Mary or his second wife Rose. In fact, when an argument was about to happen, he would go outside and tend to his garden. That was a way for him to calm down. Philip could not tell his side of the story because he died by suicide, according to the detectives on the job. The truth is, I believe they accidentally killed him and staged his body to make it look like a suicide. In fact, I do not believe that was Rose's body that was found, which brings up another question. Where is her body? Over the next few episodes, you will learn why I had to expose my dark family secret, as I'm giving my family a voice they did not have. You see, we all have family secrets, and there comes a time when we must expose our weaknesses. when our secrets can no longer remain private, when our solitude can no longer be denied, when our pain can no longer be ignored. But sometimes we feel so alone that a weakness we once thought we had overcome suddenly becomes too long to fight. And this, my friends, is my family's secret, my story, about Rose and Philip Plovie. This now concludes the first episode of Rose Plovie, The Unsolved Murder by Salty Vixen. Until next time, have a lovely day. Goodbye.